Uzo Aduba is a two-time Emmy winner for Orange is the New Black, and she is back in the Emmy race this year for her performance as the unbought and unbossed Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm in the FX limited series Mrs. America. I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and Uzo joins us today. And the first question I have to ask is, how familiar were you with Shirley Chisholm prior to taking on this role?
I was familiar with her, I knew who she was. Not obviously, I did know who she was. My mom was a big Shirley Chisholm fan growing up. And so I'd heard the name, but obviously, my child self did not know, her policies. It was just my mom was like, "My fighting Shirley Chisholm," and I'd be like, "My fighting Shirley Chisholm," so that was my child knowledge of her. And then when I first moved to New York, actually, that was when I came to know her. I had bought this book called The African American Century, which chronicled from 1900 to 99 and iconic African American figures throughout that time. And there was a section devoted to Shirley Chisholm. And that was when I learned that she was the first Black woman elected to Congress, that she was the first Black person to run for president under a major party. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So that was my baseline knowledge of her. And I remember being like, this woman is incredible. And especially the time that we're talking about that she was doing these things. And then when we were doing Mrs. America, that's when I learned more about her policies and how, frankly, a lot of the things that we watched in this last cycle and primary, a lot of the policies that have been lifted up and touted as major platforms for a lot of the candidates who were running were things that she was talking about way back then, which was pretty crazy and dope to learn. She's always been ahead of her time.
So what did it mean for you to portray someone of such historical importance?
It sounds cliche to say, honestly, Charlie, but it really did feel like an honor because well, one, it felt like an honor because this is probably 2011, later, probably 2012, 2014, maybe. I had done, for every day of Black History Month, I had featured one person, and I would write, "Because of you, I am," and she was one of the people that I had, put up there. And so, for real, my love for her was real, so when I got to be able to do this, it was like, wow, this is so wild. This woman who I, admire, love, where I bought my home in her district, not knowing that I was buying my home back 3+ years ago in her district, and it's when I go to the post office, it's the Shirley Chisholm post office, the daycare near my house is the Shirley Chisholm daycare, it was just it was an honor, and it meant the world. It felt, I don't know, strangely proud living, I think, in that community, because you understood when she was talking about who she was there in DC to represent, I'm seeing those people, you know what I mean? This is what she's about. This is the community she's serving. So it was great. It was very humbling, an honor.
So I interviewed Davia a couple months ago, and she told us about a scene in the episode Shirley, where it ended up being cut, but where Shirley visits Alabama Governor George Wallace in the hospital after the attempt on his life. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit about what it was like to shoot that scene.
Yeah, it was heavy because it's for the most part, I think a lot of us know George Wallace and his policies and quite outrageous and racially charged positions from that time. And to see a woman lead, frankly, know what real leadership looks like, know what empathy looks like, even when you're staring in the face of somebody who is working their damnedest in opposition of you. Um, it was powerful in that way. And it also was like it was very powerful also. Like I remember thinking about it because, he's in his hospital bed laid up and she's sitting in the visiting chair, that she's pulled up to his bedside. And it was also very powerful. I remember thinking about everything that Tanya, our writer, gave Shirley to say in that moment were things that he had to stay there and hear. He couldn't walk away and ignore, which I thought was so great because it's like, here is an opportunity for her to speak on her truth. She would say things in that scene about she didn't know there was anything wrong with being Black until she came to America. That was when she found it, when she came back to America, because, she was born here and then her family moved back to the West Indies for a period of time. She did, before coming back in her, adolescence. And I remember that was one of the huge lines that got me really sparked to doing the show, because my mom used to say that. My family, is from Nigeria. And my mom used to say, literally, it's like as if she had sat and interviewed my mother. My mom used to say, I didn't know there was anything wrong with being Black until I moved to America. And it's like this idea, and be like, Mommy, what do you mean by that? And she'd be like, in Nigeria, everyone is Black. Your president is Black. Your teacher is Black. Your lawyer is Black. The richest person living in your street is Black. The poorest person living in your street is Black. It has nothing to do with what you look like, how you arrive somewhere. It wasn't until I came here and people start telling me this and that thing, and what that information gave to me about how she viewed and saw herself and aligned herself and her definition of herself, which was clearly entirely different than the limited definition people had for her. So.
Well, speaking of history, we're recording this on what's going to be a historic night. We have Kamala Harris will be formally accepting the vice presidential nomination. She'll be the first woman of color on a major party's national ticket. And something that you're familiar with, she's also someone who was born to immigrant parents.
Yeah.
I usually will stay away from political questions, but This Is America is such a political show. In its very being. What does this kind of achievement and this kind of historical moment mean to you?
I think it's two parts. I think one, as an American, as a Black woman who is American, there's something, Charlie, honestly, to be said about visibility, to feel seen, right? And even though you can dream something without having seen it, like Shirley had, it is sometimes easier to dream it when you have an example. And so there was this picture, Mrs. Obama, the former First Lady, she put up on her IG of Kamala hugging these two little brown girls. And it's like, I thought that said it all, for me, that it was, and that's separate from even politics. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that's actually race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, these things should not be political, right? This is just being, right? So it's like separate from party, anyone can now dream differently of their own possibility, which is like a powerful, huge thing that I think changes the shape in which people see their lives going. So that's one part of it. And then I think, and that's true for race and for gender. So that really felt powerful. And then it felt also, the second part I would say is, it made me happy standing on the heels of having just played Shirley. It made me happy because she wasn't the last. You know what I mean? There was so much space between her moment and this moment. It's possible to start to feel like it will never happen again. you know. And I had put on my IG story, I had put a picture up of, and I think I put on my Twitter too, like I had put up a picture of Shirley, and I said like the first, and then you swipe, and it was a picture of Kamala, Senator Kamala, vice presidential, like we're friends, vice presidential Kamala, like, you know, like just hanging out, you know, like vice presidential candidate, Senator Kamala Harris next, and over her picture I wrote, but not the last, you know, and that felt nice to know that it's not, the story doesn't end there, and it didn't end with Geraldine Ferraro. It didn't end with Sarah Palin. It didn't end with Hillary Clinton. It didn't end with Elizabeth Warren or Amy Klobuchar. You know, like that. It's not ending. That we're pushing forward, hopefully, towards a place that includes everyone.
I mentioned before this that you had won 2 Emmys for your portrayal of Suzanne on Orange is the New Black, and which just concluded several months ago. And I'm curious, you know, what was it like to bid farewell to a show that had catapulted you to another level of notoriety, but you'd also been a part of for so many years?
It was hard, you know. For all the reasons that you just said, you know, it was my first TV job, which was huge for me. You know, I had never done a TV show before, or anything really before, you know, so it was like a big deal. And also it was a big deal because it was like so much of that show, beyond just the orange story of it all, is connected to those friendships that were formed there, you know, and the knowing that it was going to be over, like that I'm just not gonna, you know, see Natasha every day. You know what I'm saying? That had become my norm for some 7 years, that was not going to be the case anymore with these women, was sad. I also have to say, you know, it was also sad that initially, until you know, Mrs. America came, I was very sad at the prospect of not being able to work on a show with a bunch of women that had something to say. Also, you know, I could be on a show that had a bunch of women, but maybe it's like, look at us talk about purses or something. I don't know, you know. So it was like, you know, like having something to say, you know, like that was also like, I remember thinking thinking about that, and just the uniqueness of the show, you know, that was, and it was the longest job I'd ever had. You know, I'd never worked on anything, theater, TV, anything previous that had gone on for so long. So it was like that part is done, you know, like wild.
So I'm curious, because I always like hearing these types of stories. I'm curious, what was the night like when you won your first Emmy back in, I want to say that was 2014, when you won Guest Actress in a Comedy Series. What was that like when you found out you got nominated, to when they called your name? What was that evening like for you?
Terrifying and more terrifying. Like, it's like, it was like, I remember I was in a car when I found out I was nominated, and I started screaming, not driving. I was like in the back seat, screaming immediately, over the moon, feeling just like, what, like, just like that level, but like the mind blown emoji times like 1,000, you know, like just that level of intensity. And over the moon happy. And then the night of the show, I remember being really nervous. And then also like very happy because my mom and my sister were there. And my sister was sitting like right behind me, like here, and my mom was sitting next to me over here. And when they said my name, all I can remember, I can hear my name being said by Morgan Freeman, the voice of God. And like, you know what I mean? Like I can hear that, and then I can immediately like hear my mom being like, "Goza," and like clapping so loudly, you know what I mean? Like, and being like blown away. And then I'm walking up the steps and I'm like, afraid I'm gonna fall. And like, what am I gonna say? And then I really didn't know what to say as I was walking closer to Morgan Freeman. And I just remember this like running list of like all of his movies happening. And I'm like, Driving Miss Daisy, Shawshank Redemption, $1 Million Baby, Glory, Bruce Almighty. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm like saying all of like his work. And I was just like, that's Morgan Freeman. Like, this is crazy. Like, that is my, like, what else transpired? I don't recall, but I can remember those things very strongly.
So what was it? So I'm also curious, what was it like finding out that you had scored another Emmy nomination this time for playing Shirley? And is it something that you're used to at this point, or does it still thrill you?
Still thrilling. I mean, I don't know. Maybe other people are just like, whatever. I don't know. But like, I definitely am not. It's still like, same thing. Like, I started screaming. And this time I was in my house, though. I started screaming. I started doing like my Seinfeld happy, like happy dance. I called my mom. Like, so my mom, I told you, like, is a huge Shirley Chisholm fan. And I called her. We FaceTimed. And she was like, wow, you know, just like so excited. She's like, congratulations. I love that Mrs. America, you know, she was so into it. She was like super into it, my mom. Yeah, I was just excited. I hope the feeling never goes away, honestly, you know, like if ever it happens again, like yeah, why, I don't know how you, yeah, I was excited. I was excited.
Well, Uzo, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best at the upcoming Emmys, however they might transpire. And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button to get all our latest content. And don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks again, Uzo.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a great day.